Hello, everyone. Here's your weather hazard briefing for Monday, May 8th. We have our next round of showers and thunderstorms arriving later today, and there will be some heavier rain and snowfall with this. And yes, it's still cold enough we can get some snow in the higher elevations. Our main focus for heavier precipitation will be across portions of the Central Mountains, down around Bear Lake, and also extending from around the South Hills up through Driggs across the bench areas. That includes adjacent portions of the Snake Plain and Magic Valley. We do have another round of rain and snow, although it will be starting to warm up as we head Wednesday into Thursday, especially across the eastern half of our forecast area. And then later on in the week and the weekend, we have another warm up headed our direction. Satellite this morning shows low pressure just offshore. This is the low that's going to be over the next 36 hours, swinging up through Oregon, Washington, up in the Idaho Panhandle, and eventually later on tomorrow into early Wednesday up across northwestern Montana, eventually shifting into southern portions of Alberta and British Columbia. Our weather risk outlook, it continues to indicate, we got showers and thunderstorms in the area. We do have our frost advisory over the Snake Plain and the Magic Valley. The most likely area to see any frost or even light freeze conditions will be out across around the INL, the Arco Desert area, away from some of our more populated areas across the plain and the Magic Valley. We continue to highlight the Southeast Highlands, the Wood River area, the Sawtooth area. This is where the majority of our flooding is continuing and expected to take place. That's why we have the moderate risk in those areas. As we get warmer later on this week, we may have to push some of these areas in terms of impacts up a little bit. But you'll notice off and on showers and thunderstorms today, a little bit around tomorrow, but then Wednesday into Thursday are next best chance, and then we start to taper their back off as we go into Friday across the area. So let's take a look at where those showers and thunderstorms actually are going to be for today. And for the most part this morning, not much going on. A little bit of shower activity early on, moving into the South Hills, moving into the Magic Valley, over into the Treasure Valley. This will lift to the north and to the east today, and you'll notice our first batch of heavier precipitation we talked about down around Oakley, the South Hills, shifting over into the Driggs area during the day. That is the case. Some of this may extend up into the Island Park area. So we go into right around late afternoon, early evening. We have showers and thunderstorms that'll be over the central mountains. We'll also have some showers and thunderstorms over the southeast corner. There will be thunderstorms today. We're not expecting any severe thunderstorms, but we could see some storms, especially across the Snake Plain and the Magic Valley onto the south, producing some gusty winds over 35 miles per hour. And any of these storms also could produce a little bit of small hail as well. Going to this evening, there's that other area of heavier precipitation we were potentially looking at across the Bear Lake region. And then into tonight, as the low shifts across Oregon and Washington into northern Idaho, a pretty good area of rain and snow shifting into the central mountains overnight. There's a low chance a few of these higher resolution models have a band of showers extending back into the Snake Plain and Magic Valley by sunrise tomorrow. That's a very low chance. Most of that's going to be in the central mountains, back up into portions of the Idaho Panhandle. And then as we go into tomorrow, we don't have a lot going on. Maybe a few showers up across Limhi County to southwestern Montana early tomorrow afternoon and across the southeast corner as well. But not much in the way of storminess for tomorrow afternoon and evening, and then we have a bit of a break again until we get later, like we said, into Wednesday and Thursday across the area. So going back to some of our forecast parameters here for today, here's our highs for today. We're going to look at temperatures over the next few days, then we'll go back and look at precipitation, and then eventually some of our flood-prone areas with our rivers across the region. 50s and 60s over the lower elevations today, 40s and into the high country for this afternoon if you're headed up that direction. The warmest will be from Blackfoot to Burley over into the Treasure Valley on south, where we're looking at some mid-60s this afternoon. And within a couple of degrees tomorrow, either direction, warmer or cooler, depending on location. We start to push it back up a little bit again on Wednesday, Thursday, and eventually Friday. We got more 70s into the forecast, and it's going to be even warmer as we head into the weekend. It may not necessarily be dry, but certainly we're going back to where we're going to have to worry about temperatures, not only in the afternoon, but in the overnight hours being warm enough to keep that snow melt going through the period. So going back to what we're looking at with this round of precipitation, this is mainly through early tomorrow morning. You'll notice the heaviest amounts, like we said, around a tenth to a third of an inch over the Wood River Valley, up into the Stanley Basin, the Sawtooth, the surrounding mountains there. Some of those higher elevations could see just over a quarter of an inch of precipitation falling. There's that heavier band of a tenth to around a third of an inch, especially right along the bench areas around American Falls, Pocatello, up near Idaho Falls, and then again around Bear Lake, about a tenth to a third of an inch in some areas. In terms of snow, mid and higher elevation snow is still expected. Most of that, if we're going to see snow, is going to be over the Sawtooth and the surrounding mountains. Those high peaks seeing up just barely over 6 inches. Otherwise, common amounts are 1 to 3 inches. In those areas, a little bit of light snow over into the Tetons, down across the Bear River Range, and up along the Montana border as well. And, these are just the yes-no forecast. So looking at, what we might see with this event coming through today, probability forecast. So you can see those general areas seeing a tenth of an inch. Anything getting up into those oranges and yellows are 50, 60, up to 100%. We'll move this up to a third of an inch or more. We were talking about that kind of as a threshold. And looking at those probabilities, we're still looking, especially around the Sawtooths and the surrounding mountains, up towards the Wood River Valley, up into the Stanley Basin, the southeast corner. They're not high probabilities, but they're over in some areas over 40%, the general trend in these areas. So like we said, that tenth to a third is a good chance. Some higher amounts are certainly possible. We'll push this up to over a half an inch or higher, and you'll notice those probabilities really drop off. We talked about maybe a few spots over in the Sawtooths, maybe over a half an inch of precipitation that's rain or melted snow. The probability forecasts in some areas there are 30 to 50% indicate that. Not much as you get across the bench areas and also down around the Bear Lake area into portions of southwestern Wyoming. So for the event that's coming through on Wednesday and Thursday, not necessarily going to look at the exact amounts, but the probability forecast of what we might see in terms of precipitation with that event. Generally, this is going to be east of I-15 and US 20. Now, you do see some probabilities of around 30, 40, even 50% across portions of the Central Mountains and the Snake Plain. Once you get into the Magic Valley, not much in the chance of measurable precipitation at this point. But those probabilities east of the interstate, we're talking 60, 70% or higher. That's of a tenth of an inch or more. We'll push this up to around a quarter of an inch, and you'll notice those probabilities continue to dwindle, but they're still there, especially east of I-15. And again, we're looking at some probabilities 40, 50, 60%, especially in the higher elevations. Once you get back to around Arco, Bora Peak, up into Limhi County along the border, some of those probabilities still around 30 to 40%. And finally, we'll look at that half-inch threshold or more, and you'll notice that, once again, there's still some probabilities there, but they continue to drop off. Right along the Wyoming border, the Montana border, up around West Yellowstone, we're still looking at 30 to 40% probabilities, 40 to 50 down across the Bear River Range. So even if it's going to be cooler, we've got to deal with rain and the snow that's falling, and that snow eventually will melt rather quickly as we go into later on this week into the weekend. So now let's take a look at where we continue with our river flooding forecast issues. This is the Blackfoot near coming out of the Blackfoot Reservoir near Henry. We're well into minor stage. It's starting to drop off a little bit. Suspect it may push down towards action stage, but still looking at the potential of flooding along that stretch of the Blackfoot River. Looking at the Portneuf River at Topaz, we're floating right around that minor action stage delineation. We're going to stay pretty much there over the next several days into the weekend and the early part of next week. The Bear River down at the Idaho-Wyoming border, we're well into action stage with flooding there, and it's going to slowly continue to rise, especially if we can get some heavier rain and snow in that area in the coming days as well. And the Bear River along the Idaho-Utah state line, we're solidly into action stage. Again, we'll have to watch precipitation falling in those areas to see what happens into the days to come. So going in, looking at the Portneuf in the Pocatello area, you'll notice the forecast and the trace is still in the moderate range, maybe on the lower end of some of the ensemble probability forecasting. Still a potential there, especially if we get more moisture falling into the river basin. A 34%, 30 to 35% chance of reaching major flood stage. But right now, we're solidly going to keep it at moderate flood stage, not only with the official forecast, but those ensemble forecasts indicate the same thing. And the Big Wood River at Haley, we're kind of on the low end of the guidance. We're still in action stage. We still have some impacts. And with the moisture coming and the warmer temperatures, you can see that forecast curve and the ensemble curve starting to go back up as we head into next week. At the moment, 85 to 90% chance of going back into minor flood, and still not a zero chance of going into moderate flood stage, around 30 to 35%. But that's towards the very end of the period. It solidly looks like minor flood stage is where we're going to be at by the time we get to that early part of next week. So like we said, we've got showers and thunderstorms today. We've got a couple of areas of looking for heavier precipitation falling. The next round Wednesday into Thursday. It's cool for now, but warmer temperatures will return as we get into the later part of this week and into the weekend. Have a great day and do stay safe out there, everyone.